Very good. When we open our nervous system with this focused breathing, are we making ourselves more vulnerable?
That's a really good question, and it really points to the importance of combining pranayama, particularly this type of pranayama, with deep meditation. Because what you're doing with this spinal breathing practices, as I mentioned before, is you're loosening up the nervous system. You're making it more receptive to the energy flows that occur within it. And you're doing it in a particular way, following the spinal nerve, which covers your entire nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a very good effect. But it also sets you up for whatever comes next. And in the case of our system, it's deep meditation, which cultivates inner silence. So what you're doing is you're bringing inner silence into all those openings and that receptivity and that and illuminating that energy flow. There are certain schools of practice that focus very much just on pranayama, and sometimes that can lead to problems, because if you're doing a lot of pranayama and then going out and into the business place right after that, or you're not doing something to stabilize that with inner silence, it can lead to some sensitivities and some imbalance. And I have experienced this in the past in my own research, and I've known people who have been very much involved in pranayama for many years who actually were pretty short-tempered. So, yes, there is, pranayama does create a sensitivity in us, and it's important that we manage that correctly in terms of what we're putting in there right after.
Yes, because if we start feeling a little angry or irritable or edgy, we probably want to back off, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. That goes for both practices, spinal breathing and meditation.
And meditation.
What we really want to do is we want to cultivate a balance between our rising ecstatic energy and our inner silence. And if you go all the way back to the first interview we had a couple of months ago, we talked about the two pillars of enlightenment being the cultivation of abiding inner silence being the one pillar, and the other pillar being the cultivation of ecstatic conductivity in the nervous system, which is what spinal breathing pranayama is about. And you want to have these in balance. If you focus too much on the ecstatic side of it, on the kundalini side of it, you're going to run into some problems if you're not cultivating the inner silence part of it. So we need to have those two in balance.
Well, I haven't gotten to that point yet where I've had to worry about that, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, hey, you've been jumping on your seat. That's a beginning. Not that should be happening, or you should be looking for it.
And I've also I also had experienced a few times, and it wasn't until hearing the end of your book that I realized that, oh gosh, that must have been what I saw. When I saw dark circles, like deep blue with a haze around it.
Yes, that's a very signature type of experience for spinal breathing pranayama, and also for certain mudras and bandhas. And what that is that's beginning to see in the subtle levels within inside yourself. And what you're really seeing is looking out through the spinal nerve. You're opening your third eye is what you're doing. That's what everybody hears about, opening the third eye. This technique, just as a sort of one aspect of it, is opening the third eye, because you're opening the whole spinal nerve from the brow all the way down to the perineum. And when you begin to see those concentric circles, generally with the lighter colors on the outside and the darker color in the center, and perhaps at some point some white light in the middle, maybe not, but that's essentially looking out through the spinal nerve. It's the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, fantastic. The great thing about these teachings with AYP is that you don't have to have these symptoms and signs and jolts. They're not prerequisites for getting further down the spiritual path, and that takes a lot of pressure off, because I've actually studied certain spiritual paths that tell you to look for signs. And then when you start looking for things, I think you get all disappointed that, oh, maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe it's not going to happen for me.
Yes, it's very possible. It's very possible to go on without much happening for a long time, and guess what? Life is just getting better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's more love in life, and there's more radiance coming out, and just feeling better in being with people and with family, and in our work, more creative. And these are the real signs of progress. I don't really believe that we should be looking for experiences, particularly during the practice, because it's just a distraction.
Yes.
Not that we shouldn't be having experiences, but if we do have them, okay, there it is. There's the tunnel. You know, there's the circle, or whatever, or there's the expansive, blissful space inside me, which is another experience that's pretty common with this practice, is a sort of an opening up, where we're opening up our inner senses, which is one of the limbs of yoga, actually. It's the introversion of sense perception. All these kinds of things can be happening or not happening. And whenever we notice, we just come back to the practice, very easy like that. Mm-hmm. And we'll notice the results in activity. That's where it counts.
I had a strange thing happen last night in my practice. When I started my breathing, and when I brought the energy or my focus, visualizing my breath coming up the spinal cord, when it got to my third eye, I could feel this little, like an expansion of energy in that area. Not a headache, but just a kind of like a throb.
Yeah, that's a common experience. Yeah, many people have that, and there can be other sensations in the head as well, and if we're overdoing, there can even be a headache. So we're definitely moving energy into the head. That's what this is a symptom of.
Okay.
That we're beginning to integrate that flow.
Yes.
From our root to our brow.
Yes.
As that continues, the connection between the brow and the root will become more experienced.
Yes.
In terms of energy sensations, and it also gets into some sexual sensations. Mm-hmm. For example, we'll be learning later on the mudra where we raise the eyes and center things a bit towards the brow, and that can provide a direct stimulation down in the pelvic area, which is just further evidence of the connection between the head and the lower area. And as that connection improves, the energy will be coming up, will be becoming more ecstatic and more blissful. And the process of purification just keeps going on and on and on and on. And these practices just kind of keep nudging it along. And it's the long-term daily practice that really brings us along with these things. Many people believe that enlightenment or spiritual development is sort of like, aha, okay, now I'm there.
Yes.
And maybe in very, very rare instances this might be true. But for the vast majority of people, it's a very gradual process that goes on over years and years and years. Uh-huh. And with these practices, you can go along at a very good pace, but it is gradual and it does take time, and that really makes it safer too. Most of the people that have sudden awakenings generally go through a lot of misery, and they're not there yet anyway.
Yes.
They have to go another 10 or 20 years to assimilate their awakening.
Yeah.
So much better to do a little bit at a time over the long haul.
Yeah, then you've got a strong foundation.
Yeah, and you can still live a normal life too, which is important for most of us.